with the silence and respect which her rank invariably excites. Fourth, as I am to inherit this estate after the death of your honored father, I feel bound to choose from among his daughters that the loss to them might be as little as possible. And now, nothing remains but for me to assure you in the most animated language of the violence of my affection. To fortune, I am perfectly indifferent, and as to dowry, I'm well aware of your father's finances, and you may assure yourself that no ungenerous reproach shall ever pass my lips when we are married.
No.
No.
I am very sensible of the honor of your proposals, but it is impossible for me to do otherwise than decline them.
Oh, it is usual with young ladies to reject at first the addresses of the man they secretly mean to accept.
I do assure you that I am not one of those young ladies. Mr. Collins, you could not make me happy, and I am convinced that I am the last woman in the world who would make you so. Were your friend, Lady Catherine, to know me, she would find me in every respect ill-qualified. This matter may be considered, therefore, as finally settled.
Naturally. You cannot be serious in your rejection of me. Good sense and financial necessity forbid it. It is your wish to increase my love by suspense, as is the usual practice with the elegant females.
I am not, Mr. Collins, an elegant female intending to plague you. I am a rational creature speaking the truth from her heart. I will not have you. Can I speak plainer?
You are uniformly charming.
Mr. Collins, allow me to be the first to congratulate you.
She has begun delightfully with a refusal.
A refusal?
Out of the bashful modesty and genuine delicacy of her character.
Mr. Bennet, you are wanted immediately. She is a foolish, headstrong girl and does not know her own interest.
Headstrong?
But I will make her know it.
Headstrong? Foolish? Dear me, if so, it were better not to force her acceptance, for if liable to such defects of temper, she could not contribute much to my felicity.
Mr. Bennet, you must come make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins, for she vows she will not have him.
Pray, excuse me.
I have not the pleasure of understanding you.
And he begins to say he will not have Lizzie. Lizzie!
And what am I to do on the occasion?
Why, tell her you insist upon her marrying him.
Come here, child. Is it true Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage?
It is.
And this offer of marriage you have refused?
I have, sir.
An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins. And I will never see you again if you do.
Miss Lizzie, go on in this way, and I'm sure you will never find a husband. And I do not know who is to maintain you when your father is dead. Oh, Mr. Collins.
Pray, excuse me, but I wish to withdraw my pretensions to your daughter's favor. I have come to feel that her high spirits may not find their most perfect expression in the somewhat circumscribed life of the parsonage. I have meant well, and if my behavior has been in any way reprehensible, I here beg leave to apologize. I am resigned, but I hope improved. Resignation is never so perfect as when the blessing denied begins to lose its value in our estimation.
I shall simply say that I will never speak to you again, and you will find me as good as my word. I do not take pleasure in talking to undutiful children.
The discussion of Mr. Collins' offer was now nearly at an end, but rather than decamp in disarray, he made it known
that he was to have always gone on Saturday, and until Saturday he still meant to stay.
and
The assiduous attention paid to Lizzie was soon transferred,
to Charlotte Lucas, who was visiting,
whose civility in listening to him
was a seasonable relief to us all. Jane, this has come from Netherfield.
From Netherfield?
Caroline Bingley says their whole party are leaving for town without any intention of coming back again.
I will not pretend to regret anything I shall leave behind in Hertfordshire, except your society, my dearest friend. It is evident by this that Mr. Bingley comes back no more this winter.
It is only evident that Miss Bingley does not mean he should.
I will read you the passage which particularly hurts me. I will have no reserves from you. Mr. Darcy is eager to see his younger sister, and to confess the truth, we are scarcely less eager to meet her again. Georgiana has no equal for beauty, elegance, and accomplishments, and we dare entertain the hope of her being hereafter our sister.
Foolishness! She is a child!
Is it not clear enough? Does it not expressly declare that Caroline neither expects nor wishes me to be her sister, and that she is perfectly convinced of her brother's indifference to me? Can there be any other opinion on the subject?
Yes, there can. For mine is totally different. Will you hear it?
Most willingly.
It is this. Miss Bingley sees that her brother is in love with you and wants him to marry Georgiana Darcy. I also suspect that Mr. Bingley's regard was further suppressed by his friend Mr. Darcy's interference. He watched you most narrowly as you danced.
You must not criticize Lizzie. Perhaps I have imagined Mr. Bingley's regard. Women fancy admiration means more than it does.
And men take care that it should. His sister has influenced him as well, Jane, in conjunction with his friend.
Surely she only wishes his happiness.
Oh, she may wish many things beside his happiness, such as an increase in wealth, consequence, and great connections.
No, Lizzie. I think no ill of him or his sister. Let me take it in the best light, in the light in which it might be understood. I have at least the comfort that it has not been more than an error of fancy on my side, and that it has done no harm to anyone but myself.
Really, you are too good. You wish to think all the world respectable. The more I see of the world, the more I am dissatisfied with it. And every day confirms my belief of the inconsistency of all human characters. I have come to distrust the appearance of either merit or sense.
You must not hinder your happiness on my behalf.
So, Lizzie, your sister is crossed in love, I find. I congratulate her. Next to being married, a girl likes to be crossed in love now and then. You will not be long outdone by Jane. Here are officers enough at Meryton to disappoint all the young ladies in the country. Let Wickham be your man. He is a pleasant fellow and would jilt you creditably.
Thank you, sir, but a less agreeable man would satisfy me. We must not all expect Jane's good fortune.
amazement within the very week, and in as short a time as Mr. Collins' long speeches would allow, all was arranged between him and Charlotte Lucas by way of
Domestic arrangement.
And Lizzie feels she accepted him solely from
the pure and disinterested desire of an establishment.
And Mama said that she cared not how that establishment was gained.
Charlotte's marriage is unaccountable. In every view, unaccountable.
My dear Lizzie, do not give way to such thoughts as these. They will ruin your happiness.
Engaged to Mr. Collins? My dear Charlotte, impossible.
Why should you be so surprised, Eliza? Do you think it incredible that he is able to procure any woman's good opinion because he was not so happy as to succeed with you?
Indeed not, but 2 offers of marriage in 3 days?
I am sure, Eliza, once you have had time to think it over, you will be quite satisfied with me. I am not a romantic, you know. I never was. You must visit the parsonage as soon as ever you can.
And I tell you, Mr. Collins has been taken in. Worse, Elizabeth, I fear, is the cause of all this mischief.
No.
I tell you, we are in a pitiable state. Because of the entails, Charlotte Lucas will become mistress of this house, and I will be forced to make room for her and live to see her take my place in it.
Let us hope for better things. Let us flatter ourselves that I may be the survivor.
In our gloom, Mr. Wickham's society was that of material service, and his betrayal by Mr. Darcy was general knowledge. We all agreed that Mr. Darcy was the worst of men.
On the following Monday, the Gardiners, my mother's brother and his wife, arrived. Mr. Gardiner is a sensible, gentlemanlike man, and Mrs. Gardiner, as always, enlivened the premises by distributing presents, describing all the newest fashions, and the giving of sage advice.
A young man such as you describe, Mr. Bingley, so easily falls in love with a pretty girl for a few weeks and just as easily forgets her. Now as to Mr. Wickham, whom you mention far too frequently, I would have you be on your guard.
Oh, he shall not be in love with me if I can prevent it.
Do not involve yourself in an affection which the want of fortune should make very imprudent.
At present, I am not in love with him. But I do count him as the most agreeable man I ever saw.
Unwise.
But how am I to know that it would be wisdom to resist? All that I can promise you, therefore, is not to be in a hurry.
I say no more. I shall take Jane with me to London, poor girl, as a change of scene might be of service. It had better happen to you, dear Lizzie. You might have laughed yourself out of it sooner. I understand you are to visit the Collinses in their newly married parsonage, and you must visit me as well.
As March was to take me to Hunsford Parsonage, the improvement of spending a night in London made the plan as perfect as plan could be. Jane, look now. I see London is agreeable to you.
Lizzie, sit with me.
With every pleasure. You look so well.
I confess myself to have been entirely deceived in Miss Bingley's regard for me. She barely visited me in London, and when she did come, it was very evident she had no pleasure in it. In fact, she seemed to come to convince me of her brother's interest in Miss Darcy.
All gentlemen are held in my lowest repute. It is said that Mr. Wickham is now the admirer of a certain Miss King, whose most remarkable charm, I might add, seems to be the acquisition through family mortality of £10,000, and it is least indelicate to direct his attentions toward her so soon after this event. You are pale, Elizabeth. Are you ill?
A man in distressed circumstances has not the time for the elegant decorums which others might observe. If she has no objection to it, why should we?
Her not objecting to it does not justify him.
You know, I have a very poor opinion of young men who live in Derbyshire, and their intimate friends who live in Hertfordshire are not much better. I am sick of them all. Thank heavens I'm going to the Collinses' parsonage tomorrow, where I shall find a man who has not one agreeable quality, who has neither sense nor manners to recommend himself. Perhaps stupid men are the only ones worth knowing after all.
Bravo. You must accompany Mr. Gardiner and myself on a tour of pleasure this summer, where we shall avoid the sex altogether and regard the landscape.
My dear aunt, what delight, what felicity. You give me fresh life and vigor, adieu to disappointment and spleen. What are men to rocks and mountains? Every object in my next day's journey was new and interesting. The chaise comfortable, the weather delightful, and all conspired for the pleasure of the traveller. At length, the parsonage was discernible, and Mr. Collins and Charlotte appeared at the gate.
My dearest Eliza, you are welcome and unwelcome again. Come in immediately. You must be worried and jostled.
I have news of Lady Catherine's delicate consideration and civility in inviting us to dine at Rosings next night but one. Do not make yourself uneasy, my dear cousin, about your apparel. The Lady Catherine will not think the worse of you for being simply dressed.
The dinner was exceedingly handsome, and there were all the servants and each article of plate which Mr. Collins had promised and elaborately described.
You must not be surprised, Eliza, that Mr. Darcy will be in attendance.
bringing with him a Colonel Fitzwilliam, the youngest son of his uncle.
It is my great pleasure to introduce the Right Honorable Lady Catherine de Bourgh, whose wit, beauty, and affability make her the admired
Yes,
ornament.
yes, quite so. You are, I believe, Elizabeth Bennet.
I am.
Your father's estate is entailed on Mr. Collins, I think. For your sake, I'm glad of it, but otherwise I see no occasion for entailing estates from the female line. A word, Mr. Collins.
Ah, Miss Bennet, I had not the hope of meeting you here.
Nor I.
Allow me to present Colonel Fitzwilliam.
Your beauty of report exceeds Miss Bennet's.
This has not been true, Colonel Fitzwilliam, in all quarters.
Miss Bennet, your family?
My family?
How many sisters have you, Miss Bennet?
I have 4 sisters.
That is a great many. Are you the eldest?
I am the second.
Are they handsome?
Indeed.
Do your sisters play and sing? Do you draw?
No, not at all.
What, none of you? That is very strange. Has your governess left you?
We never had a governess.
No governess? How was that possible? 5 daughters brought up at home without a governess? I never heard of such a thing. Your mother must have been quite a slave to your education.
Not perhaps as you might think.
Then who taught you? Who attended to you?
Such of us as wished to learn never wanted the means. We were always encouraged to read, and books were always provided. Those who chose to be idle certainly might.
Aye, no doubt. But that is what a governess will prevent. Had I known your mother, I should have advised her most strenuously to engage one. Are any of your younger sisters out?
Yes, ma'am. All.
Oh! All 5 out at once? Very odd. The younger one's out before the eldest are married.
But really, ma'am, I think it would be very hard upon younger sisters that they should not have their share of society and amusement, because the elder may not have the means or inclination to marry early.
Upon my word, you give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person. Pray, what is your age?
With 3 younger sisters grown up, your ladyship can hardly expect me to own it.
What is that you are saying, Fitzwilliam? What are you telling Miss Bennet?
We are speaking of music, madam.
Of music? Then pray, speak aloud.
I was just reminding Miss Bennet of her earlier promise to favor us at the pianoforte.
Ah, yes. Pray excuse me. I fear you will not find me a great proficient. Pray continue your conversation rather than attend me.
I often tell young ladies that no excellence in music is to be acquired without constant practice.
You mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, but my courage always rises with every attempt to intimidate me.
You could not really believe me to entertain any design of alarming you. I have been of your acquaintance long enough to know that you enjoy the occasional professing of opinions, which in fact are not your own.
Your cousin will give you a very pretty notion of me and teach you not to believe a word I say. Take care, sir, for you are provoking me to retaliate, and such things may come out as will shock your relations to hear.
I'm not afraid of you.
Pray, let me hear what you accuse him of. I should like to hear how such a paragon behaves among strangers.
You shall hear then, but prepare for something very dreadful. The first time of ever my seeing him was at a ball, and he refused to dance. And more than one young lady was sitting down in want of a partner.
I had not, at that time, the honor of knowing any lady in the assembly, and found myself ill-qualified to recommend myself to strangers.
Shall we ask him why a man of sense and education who has lived in the world is ill-qualified to recommend himself to strangers?
I have not the talent of conversing easily with those I have never seen before.
Well, fortunately for all present, that is not the case here. Strangely and unexpectedly after our delightful evening at Lady Catherine de Bourgh's, the 2 cousins came often of an afternoon to the parsonage. It was plain that Colonel Fitzwilliam came because he took pleasure in Charlotte's and my society. But why Mr. Darcy came so often was more difficult to understand.
If you would not laugh me to scorn, Eliza, I would suggest that his being partial to you.
The man frequently sits there 10 minutes together without once opening his lips.
Ah, but he looks at you quite appraisingly when your gaze is engaged elsewhere.
Stuff. I'm going for a ramble in the park.
Ah, Miss Bennet.
Colonel Fitzwilliam, I did not know you walked this way.
Are you going much further?
No, I should have turned in a moment. Do you certainly leave Kent on Saturday?
Yes, if Darcy does not put it off again.
I do not know anybody who more enjoys the power of doing what he likes than Mr. Darcy.
But so we all do. It is just that Mr. Darcy has better means of acquiring it than most, and I am at his disposal.
I imagine he brought you down with him for the sake of having someone at his disposal. I wonder he does not marry, to secure a lasting convenience of that kind. But perhaps his sister does as well for the present, as she is under his sole care.
In fact, I am joint in the guardianship of Miss Darcy.
Are you indeed? Young ladies of her age are sometimes a little difficult to manage, and if she has true Darcy spirit, she may like to have her own way.
Indeed. She is one of the most tractable creatures in the world, and a great favorite of Miss Bingley. I've heard you know her.
A little. Darcy is uncommonly kind to Bingley and takes a prodigious deal of care of him.
I believe Bingley is very much indebted to him from something Darcy said. It is a matter which he does not wish to be generally known, of course, because if word got round to the lady's family, it would be a most unpleasant thing.
You may, of course, depend on my not mentioning it.
He merely mentioned to me that he had recently congratulated himself on saving a friend from the inconveniences of a most imprudent marriage. And I only suspected it to be Bingley, as his open nature might get him into a scrape of the sort.
Pardon me, but I do not see what right Mr. Darcy had to decide on the propriety of a friend's inclination.
As I recalled, there were some very strong objections to the lady's family. One was a country attorney, the other some sort of mercantile background, and I believe a very unsuitable mother. But that is all conjecture. Good day to you, Miss Bennet.
To Jane herself there could be no possibility of objection, all loveliness and goodness as she is. And neither could anything be urged against my family, who, though with some peculiarities, has abilities Mr. Darcy himself need not disdain. Of course, my mother. But Mr. Darcy would receive a deeper wound from the want of importance in a friend's connections than from their want of sense. He has been governed by this worst kind of pride, and partially from the wish of retaining Mr. Bingley for his sister.
Miss Bennet.
Mr. Darcy?
May I? Would it be suitable if I inquired of your health?
My health?
As I've not seen you these past days, I thought I come to inquire of your health.
My health, Mr. Darcy, meets all the usual standards.
Ah.
Yes.
Ah. In vain I have struggled. It will not do. My